Extra, extra, we're back with another entry. This one is about Donald Trump. And I gotta admit, I like the guy for the simple fact he's true to his word. If he says he gonna make America great again, well, by God, that's what he's gonna do. He's gonna stand with the police that beat up nonviolent protesters and kill unarmed black men. And what else is he gonna do? He's gonna promote his friends that are human sex trafficking pedophiles that strike deals with other pedophiles and make it to where you can't be prosecuted. This darn Donald Trump, this man is a man of his word. In the words of Charlemagne the God, our commander in Cheeto ain't going for it. In the words of Michael Eric Dyson, this orange apparition will not have it. In my own words, our executive orange man is zero tolerance for altering the jaundiced perception that North America has against the dark races. He's not going to let anybody defund his Minnesota Police Department that kills unarmed black men and beat up nonviolent protesters. And along with that, he's not going to let anybody take the honor away from Confederate officers that fought against America and that fought for slavery of the dark races. As you can see this article, it says, pressure mounts to rename Army bases that honor Confederate officers. Donald Trump isn't having it, not on his watch. It was the summer of 1917. America had declared war on Germany a few months earlier, and young men were streaming into the army by the tens of thousands. So the U.S. War Department rushed to create new camps and bases around the country for all the soldiers who would soon go to war. A July 2nd memo to the Army Chief of Staff spelled out how to choose names for the new facilities. It was titled, quote, Names for Cantonments, National Army and Camps, National Guard, end quote. The memo said the bases and camps would be named after Americans, preferably those with short names to, quote, avoid clerical labor, end quote. The military would choose the names of, quote, federal commanders, end quote, for facilities in the North, the memo stated, and, quote, Confederate commanders for camps of divisions from southern states, end quote. The first of these camps in the South were Camp Lee in Virginia, named after the Confederate commander Robert E. Lee, and Camp Beauregard in Louisiana, after another Confederate general, Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard. Then came a steady stream of bases bearing the last name of rebel generals, eventually 10 in all, created over the course of World War I and World War II. Among them, Fort Bragg, NC, Braxton Bragg, Fort Benning, GA, Henry Benning, and Fort Hood, Texas, John Bell Hood. Now, as the nation erupts in protests over police treatment of African Americans, these base names honoring Confederate leaders are coming under scrutiny again. Michael Newcity, a Duke University professor, has been researching the naming issue for several decades. He said his interest started with a simple question when he arrived in North Carolina from the Washington, D.C. area and visited Fort Bragg. Quote, why would the U.S. Army name its largest base after one of the most senior generals in the Confederate Army? End quote, he asked. He said it seems some of this was driven by the lost cause, an interpretation of the Civil War that suggests there were gallant leaders on both sides, and an effort by Southern leaders and some historians to downplay the central question of slavery and play up so-called states' rights in the face of so-called Northern aggression. Retired Army General David Petraeus picked up on that theme, writing in The Atlantic this week, quote, had Bragg, like most of the rebel honorees, not been elevated by the effort to memorialize the so-called lost cause, he would probably have been co-signed to historical obscurity, end quote. Petraeus wrote that throughout his Army career, he encountered enthusiasm for rebel commanders and, quote, a special veneration for Lee, end quote. Now, he wrote, it's time to retire all those names. Quote, we do not live in a country to which Braxton Bragg, Henry L. Benning, or Robert E. Lee can serve as an inspiration. Acknowledging this fact is imperative, end quote. This is not the first time there's been a call to change the name of Army bases. In 2015, after white supremacist Dylann Roof slaughtered black worshipers at a South Carolina church, the Pentagon was pressed to remove the names of Confederate generals from its facilities. The armies wouldn't budge. Quote, "These historic names represent individuals, not causes or ideologies. It should be noted that the naming occurred in the spirit of reconciliation, not division," end quote, said Brigadier General Malcolm Frost, the Army spokesman at the time. 3 years ago, following a rally of white supremacists and neo-Nazis in Charlottesville, VA, a Democratic lawmaker from New York, Rep. Yvette Clarke, introduced a bill requiring the Defense Secretary to change the names of installations, quote, "named after individuals who took up arms against the U.S. in the Civil War," end quote. The Army had no comment that year. In 2017, the Congressional Research Service looked into the issue. Quote, "The Department of the Army has no formal administrative process for renaming military installations," end quote, it said. Quote, "Proponents of renaming the bases contend that there are noteworthy national military leaders from other conflicts who demonstrated selfless service and sacrifice. Opponents of renaming these installations cite the bureaucracy of creating a new review process and the difficulty of satisfying the various viewpoints over which names, if any, would be selected as subjects of contention," end quote. Now, after the killing of George Floyd and international protest over racism and police brutality, there is a new national conversation about the prevalence of Confederate symbols. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has called for the removal of the statue of Robert E. Lee in Richmond, Virginia, and a crane recently lifted a Confederate soldier from its perch on Washington Street in Lee's hometown of Alexandria, Virginia, where it had stood since 1889. Marine Commandant General David Berger last week prohibited the display of the Confederate battle flag at Marine installations, including on mugs, posters, and bumper stickers. The Navy is moving in the same direction. Commander Nate Christensen, spokesman for the Chief of Naval Operations, said in a statement, quote, "The Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Mike Gilday, has directed his staff to begin crafting an order that would prohibit the Confederate battle flag from all public spaces and work areas aboard Navy installations, ships, aircraft, and submarines. The order is meant to ensure unit cohesion, preserve good order and discipline, and uphold the Navy's core values of honor, courage, and commitment," end quote. And the Pentagon has agreed to look into the matter of the bases named after Confederate officers. Quote, "The Secretary of Defense and Secretary of the Army are open to bipartisan discussion of the topic," end quote, according to a statement issued on Monday. Whether any discussion will be bipartisan remains to be seen. When Rep. Clarke introduced her bill 3 years ago, it drew only 29 Democratic co-sponsors, and it never made it out of a House of Armed Services subcommittee. On Wednesday, President Trump tweeted that his administration, quote, "will not even consider the renaming of these magnificent and fabled military installations," end quote. It has been suggested that we should rename as many as 10 of our legendary military bases, such as Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Fort Hood in Texas, Fort Benning in Georgia, etc. These monumental and very powerful bases have become a part of a great American heritage and a history of winning, victory, and freedom. The United States of America trained and deployed our heroes on these hallowed grounds and won 2 world wars. Therefore, my administration will not even consider the renaming of these magnificent and fabled military installations. Our history as the greatest nation in the world will not be tampered with. Respect our military. In the words of M'Baku, I will not have it. That's right. Donald J. Trump and his administration are not open to any new ideas, suggestions, or reform. They like things like they are. America is great again under the Trump administration. those that fought the U.S., those that enslaved the dark races will retain their honor, and no army bases under the Trump administration will be renamed from these Confederate soldiers. Well, this is the part of the entry where we part ways. Don't forget to leave me a comment in the comment section because I value your opinion. Do you even think Trump has the power to get these army bases renamed? Because it all seems like he's a shade tree mechanic at some point. Do you want to bring back the good old days like Donald J. Trump? If you do, leave it in the comment section. Do you like my impersonation of Donald J. Trump? Do you like today's video? Hit that like button. You know where it is. If you want others to find out about the renaming of army bases, share this video. I don't mind. If you haven't already, subscribe. Until next time, peace.